Whereas in the West, spooky stories are usually read in the cold, dark hours of a winter's night. It's tradition in Japan to tell stories of ghosts and demons in the long, hot days of summer, the rationale being that such tales send a cool chill down the spine, cutting through the horrific humidity of the months of July and August. Here are 4 tales from Japan to send a shiver down your spine. Sometime in the early 1970s, a young couple was driving up the slopes of the Inaki Ridge. They were heading for Hisayama on the other side of the mountain, and to get there from where they were, they had to pass a narrow road up the hill. Just before entering Inaki Tunnel, their car unleashed a grounding sound, and the engine died. They were stranded. However, they noticed a passage on the right side of the road, so they left their car and headed up to the forest to seek help. After a short while, they came across a handwritten sign reading,
"The Constitution of Japan does not apply beyond this point."
The trail, overgrown with thick bush, was becoming more and more difficult to climb, but a few hundred meters further, they suddenly entered a small village. It seemed abandoned, the houses dark and dilapidated, and nobody could be seen. There were no sounds of people or animals, even the wind had calmed. It was dead silent. Growing anxious, they decided to walk back to their car, but something moved inside one of the houses. Suddenly, a man stood on the porch of a dilapidated building not more than 30 meters away.
"Hi there. Welcome to Inaki Village,"
he shouted. And with just a few steps, he appeared right in front of them.
"We love visitors here. We just don't like it when they leave us again."
With a swift motion of his sickle, he cut down the young boy from his neck to the side of his belly. The young man looked at him astonished before collapsing to the ground. The girl tried to back away, but the old man seized her in an unnaturally firm grip. He lifted her straight up with one hand and threw her down on the gravelled street with such brutality she felt her ribs break. When the sickle came down towards her neck, she turned her head towards the closest house, and with horror she saw what she hadn't noticed before. Behind and between the small buildings were decaying corpses of people, all killed by the mad old man with the sickle. Nobody heard from the young couple again. The white car still waits there, now covered with rust, punctured tires parked on the side of the road, right where the small pathway leads into the forest. Pekan is a terrifying Japanese urban legend about the mascot of a company that sells candy called Milky. The company's slogan is, "Milky tastes like mama." Pekan-chan's a young girl with big cheeks, pigtails, and a red ribbon in her hair. She's always seen with a smile on her face, licking her lips. A life-size doll can be seen in front of many shops in Japan. According to urban legend, the real story of Pekan is actually very disturbing. It is said that Pekan was modelled on a young girl called Peko, who died during the Second World War. Peko was 6 years old. She lived with her mother in a small Japanese village. During the war, there was a shortage of food in Japan. Peko and her mother were starving, and there was nothing to eat. They had to drink muddy water in order to survive and gnaw on grass and the roots of trees to stave off hunger. Peko's mother couldn't bear to see her daughter suffering, so one day she took a knife, cut off part of her arm, and offered it to Peko. When Peko took her first bite of human flesh, she couldn't believe how sweet the flesh tasted. She proceeded to kill her mother and eat her entire body. Peko continued the rest of her life as a cannibal. It is said that the reason her tongue is always out is because she is licking her mother's blood off her cheeks. And also, the name of the candy is Milky, but when you rearrange the sounds, it becomes "kill me," her mother's final words. That's why the slogan of the company, when translated from Japanese, is
Milky tastes like mama.
On the edge of a quiet village, a man named Sakabe was sleeping, when suddenly, under the cloak of night, the shape of a woman appeared knocking at his door. Still half asleep, Sakabe opened the door to a woman holding a child in her arms. The woman pleaded with Sakabe, explaining that the night was cold and she couldn't feed her child and they had nowhere to go. She asked only for a bed for the night, but refused to explain where she came from or who she was. But Sakabe, relenting to her request, let her and the child into his home. He unburdened the tired woman of her child, but watched in horror as the woman faded into shadow and disappeared back into the night air. He glanced down at the baby to find it was covered with black fur and sprouting fangs. In his shock, he dropped the child, but it too faded away. Each night, when the air was cold and the wind was blowing, the woman returned to the same house with her child and demanded to be let in, until eventually Sakabe was driven mad and abandoned his home, never to be seen again. There was once a girl, Okiku, who lived in Magi Castle as a servant of the samurai Aoyama. One of Okiku's tasks was to care for her master's collection of 10 valuable plates. But one day, while Okiku was washing the plates, she realized one was missing. No matter how many times she counted, she always came up one short. Her master was so enraged that she had lost his plate that he threw her down a well. Murdered so brutally, Okiku's soul could not rest. Every night her ghost crawled out from the well to continue counting her master's plates. She would come to count to 9, then, upon realizing that the 10th plate was still gone, she would let out an ear-piercing shriek. Okiku's screams kept everyone in the castle up all night long, for weeks on end, until eventually a Buddhist priest finally appeased her.